Let's go back to the Vietnam period very briefly, and tell us about your own motivation to get involved in a moratorium.
I grew up with refugees from Nazi Germany, and I grew up in an atmosphere, I guess, of believing that war was not the way to solve problems between nations, between people, even on a domestic level. And so when the Vietnam War and particularly Australia's engagement in that began, many of us felt, and I certainly felt very strongly, that we shouldn't be involved in that. Twofold, I guess the protest was that we Australians shouldn't be involved, and that the whole war should never have taken place the way it did. So there was a kind of an effort, I suppose, to educate people about what the war really was and the interference in the internal affairs of another nation. That was one side of it, and we got involved in teach-ins at the university and small church groups and just general meetings in our area, calling meetings saying, do you want to be educated about Vietnam, or do you want to hear what's going on, and so on. And that was pretty unpopular, of course, because a lot of Australians got swept up in the idea that we should be opposing communism wherever it was, and particularly if it was in our region, and also that we should be supporting the Americans in whatever they did as a kind of insurance policy for the future. But, on all of those counts, I guess I disagreed that it was an insurance policy. There was no guarantee about that. But the bottom line, I guess, was that I didn't really think that a military conflict was the way of solving a problem if there was a problem there. And I didn't believe that it was really our problem anyway. So that's what we tried to do, and we did it in a number of ways. We did it by teaching, but just talking with people, but also by protesting on the streets as a way, I guess, of getting a public profile for what was happening and drawing public attention. I think Australians were too easily misled by our government, or not led at all by our governments at the time, and we needed to work hard to try and get another view across. It's always difficult, of course, and marching on the street is one way of doing it, of getting some attention, not always the best attention, of course.
But it worked.
It did work. It certainly brought a lot more people into thinking about, what we were doing there and why we were there and what it was all about. I mean, when the war broke out, people didn't even know where Vietnam was. I mean, it wasn't a country that Australians had much to do with, and most people wouldn't have been able to pinpoint it on the map. Up there somewhere was, what people thought. And including myself, I wasn't well educated about that area of the world. So it was a good opportunity to learn something.